What is good, y'all? This is Taylor returning with another episode of the Empirical Scouting Podcast, joined alongside my fellow co-host who just happens to have the same name as me, and Taylor. Before we get going, how's the Labor Day weekend treating you so far?
I'm working.
Working.
Yeah.
Life of a lawyer.
Yeah, it's been work.
I feel that.
So
Yeah, I couldn't do it. I actually responded to one email today and Teams message, and I was like, what am I doing? I need to keep my free days free. But it's been a pretty eventful week one of college football. So we'll start off with some key matchups. First, and obviously probably the biggest one of the week, TCU. So let me hear what you had after watching that game.
I think the thing that stood out to me the most was Travis Hunter is for real, which, obviously when you're the number one overall recruiter in the nation, you have those expectations already, and we didn't have any reason to think he wasn't a good football player, but, playing at Jackson State for a year is a little different than playing D1 football. So getting to see him against D1 talent, and even at 165, 170 pounds, whatever this kid weighs right now, he stood out as the best football player on the field, hands down to me.
Yeah, for sure. He's got that dog in him. He wanted the ball. He wanted the ball on offense, wanted the ball on defense. It didn't matter where he played. He would play on special teams if he had to, and he was just going to make plays.
If they feed him on offense, this kid is going to win the Heisman this year, next year. This is the first time since Woodson that it seems like there's going to be a defensive player that can make an impact like this that I can think of off the top of my head. Sue,
I think that's the last one.
Yeah, Sue should have obviously won it, to be if we're being honest. But he didn't have that impact in terms of offense or special teams that was held against him. So Hunter can score touchdowns on offense as a receiver, or you could return or whatever. Jabril Peppers, Jabril Peppers had that run, but he wasn't playing offense. He was just doing special teams returning, which is great. But Travis Hunter was special. He looks like a shutdown corner. That's where I would play him at the next level. I would let him.
That's what I was going to ask you. What would you do? Because obviously he's not going to be able to play both sides of the ball every game, all game for 2 more years. Then go into the draft and do the same thing. This is not a Shohei Ohtani where you can play both positions and succeed. And even then, you're seeing that people are starting to veer away from that because of injury. But there's no way he could do it. Which do you think he would be better used on, offense or defense? It's tough. It's tough.
It is tough, and I'm speaking from a rather uninformed position right now because I haven't watched all 22 of his offensive reps, so I don't know how clean of a run or out runner he is right now or anything. But he seems very special as a cover corner. The guy was in people's hip pockets in a way that you wouldn't expect a corner to be on routes. And I think he has the potential to be a special shutdown corner. So right now, just my initial impression is that that's where I would play him. But that may end up being wrong in the long run. Who knows?
Yeah, I think they can't not play him at wide receiver with Colorado because they need him to make plays. They had some good studs on offense. Jimmy Horn Jr., Dylan Edwards, who I'll mention later.
Edwards is the other guy that stood out to me, to be honest.
Yeah,
Edwards had a great game.
And I looked at his stats, and I watched the whole game. I was at the gym for a little bit watching it, and then I got home and watched the second half. And I think he had what? I have it written down right here. He had 6 rushes for 24 yards. And that's it. And you're like, okay, he's a running back. So you're like, oh, okay, he didn't do that. And then you see his receptions, 5 receptions for 135 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah. He made sure Sanders look a little bit better than he might be, but
yeah. I know that's the narrative you like right now is
look, I sent you the passing chart for sure. We don't need to throw it up right now, but the guy he didn't play bad, and I'm not trying to say he played bad, but he lived 10 yards and under, and he lived behind the line of scrimmage. Like, he had
Yeah.
some good throws downfield. He really did. But people are getting a little bit carried away with their initial reactions against a TCU defense that is worse than it was last year. And last year it was like mediocre at best, average at best. But yeah, I mean,
The offensive game plan. I mean, I think it was just I don't. Obviously, they knew they thought that they could win the game. They think they can win every game. It's prime. He can do that. But what I think they didn't want to make any mistakes early, and they knew that they could kind of like you said, dink and dunk them to death for a while with their talent. TCU's defense was garbage at tackling. There was missed tackle after missed tackle after missed tackle, and it was kind of hard to watch. But like that's all they need to do is just run a crossing route, run a little shark wheel out. Just do anything you can near the line of scrimmage and let your playmakers do the work. And I mean, Shadir had some nice passes. I mean, he had that one diving one that Travis Hunter should have had. I say should have just because who he is, an average receiver. It would have been tough, but he dropped
that pass though. Like, I don't even think like that was an okay throw, but it wasn't like anything special. Like it was a catchable
because it was his first one.
It was a catchable pass, but it wasn't like Hunter. It wasn't the most accurate deep ball we've ever seen. He had another one that was better that he came back in the fourth quarter and he threw it down the sideline and he hit that one perfectly. So he did have one of those. And he had that play where he rolled out to his left and flipped his hips pretty much and threw across the middle, which is great. Like, he had good throws and he's got some talent. And it's just, like, obviously, but I think this guy's a first round draft pick narrative is getting a little carried away already.
And I think that'll slow down as games go on. Everyone has their week one overreactions, but I think as we see it, he'll kind of regress, I should say, to his mean. And he's still going to put up numbers. I mean, that offense, that might have been the fastest paced offense I've ever seen. Faster than those Auburn offenses, faster than MAC offenses. The camera couldn't, like, the receiver would catch the ball, hand it off to the ref, and they would still be showing the receiver, and the next thing you know, they'd already be hiking the ball. And it wouldn't even be, the cameraman wouldn't be able to catch up. It was absolutely ridiculous how fast. And if they just keep doing that, where they set them up for success with these short routes, and then draw the defense in, just throw over the top, then, I mean, I think he'll put up some numbers. He's definitely going to put up some numbers.
I mean, he's going to put up numbers. It's an offense designed for that. But, the guy within his conference that should be getting more attention for Saturday is Penix, Michael Penix, or Penix, however you want to say his name. I mean, him and O'Dunes and McMillan on that offense were making plays, and Penix was making NFL caliber throws with NFL caliber arm strength, and I emphasize that because Shedeur, his arm is actually like stronger than I thought initially after I went back and rewatched that game for Colorado, but Penix has a fastball that is impressive, and if he stays healthy this year and keeps playing the way he played yesterday, he is going to be drafted pretty high. I mean, Washington's offense was impressive.
It was, and I was a little bit lower on Michael Penix than you were, mostly because of the injuries and his age, and I just don't like banking on that. But yeah, I was watching that game also because I had a couple of bets on them, and his arm was it was going crazy. It was like a cannon out there. It was just deep ball after deep ball, and Dunze and McMillan were just open, and they were. I don't even think either one of them were the leading receiver. Maybe they were, but I know there was a third receiver as well that had over 100 yards, and it was just ridiculous. Like, that offense was just rolling, especially like it started off a little slow. It was kind of like get a feel for it, and then as soon as they completed one big pass, avalanche, just touchdown.
They just complement each other so well out there too as receivers, because McMillan is a vertical deep threat, and he really he's leaner and he's taller, but this guy's got some deep speed to him that can stretch the field. But O'Dunes is this bigger bodied physical receiver that can go up and get catches, and it's very complimentary in a lot of ways. Um, and that defense has some talent on that as well. So I mean, Washington's in a good spot where they could make a run, but I've been saying this, like, they play in the hardest conference this year. Like, so does Colorado, but you got, I mean, Washington, you got Oregon, who put on a show this weekend.
Yeah,
we all know USC is pretty good. UCLA is going to be okay. Colorado now,
Utah.
Utah. The Pac-12 is a deep conference this year.
It really is, and a lot of good quarterbacks. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if the top 5 Heisman quarterback, or actually Heisman quarterbacks, but the Heisman candidates, probably all quarterbacks. And I wouldn't be surprised if, Penix, Bo, and Caleb are all there. They can easily have at least 3 themselves.
I mean, I think there's, I don't know if it's a hot take to even say at this point, because I mean, people say this kind of stuff every time there's a returning Heisman. But I mean, Caleb would be my vote for Heisman if, like, the season ended today, and that's obviously not exactly fair. He's got a game advantage over people, but I mean, Caleb's thrown 9 touchdowns and has no interceptions already. And I understand the competition, but he's doing
what he should
same thing this year.
Yeah,
and this guy,
he's doing what he should do, and that's the thing that I like. People always like, oh, it's against North Dakota State for juniors and whatever. Like, it's against no one. And it's like, yeah, but he's doing it, and a lot of people don't. Like, I mean, we watched a couple of offenses this week not do what they should have done to that kind of competition. If you're doing what you should do, you shouldn't get penalized. And that's something that I've always thought was kind of unfair, especially in college football, when you can't really control a lot of your schedule. You can control your, like, out of conference, but interconference you really can't. And for people to knock on lesser competition for doing what they should do, and that's absolutely destroying them. If you're not, then that's a worry. It's kind of like a lose-lose situation, because if you're doing what Caleb Williams does, you get the knock. But if you don't do what he's doing, it's like, oh, he's a bust. And so it's like, what can I do? Like, I'm doing everything I should be doing.
Yeah, he's doing the same thing again, and he's showing he takes care of the ball in a good way. And if he keeps it up, I mean, unless, like, him and Travis Hunter would be the 2 guys that come to mind right now.
Yeah.
But obviously, Bo Nix has played a great game. Drew Allar played a great game.
Yeah. Penix had a great game.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there that.
I mean, Shadir. I mean, you can't, 500 yards.
I mean, yeah, stats-wise.
It's the stats-wise, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, the biggest thing is right now, though, is pivoting a little bit here. Is that Kyle McCord kind of struggled. Yeah. Marvin Harrison had 2 catches. And
24 yards, I think.
People wanted Marvin Harrison to start the year.
I mean, I'm cool with that as a Falcons fan if he wants to just slide down the draft boards.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say Marvin Harrison's got no shot at the Heisman after 1 week, but I mean, 2 catches, 15 yards, and I don't know Ibuka's stat line off the top of my head, but I know he didn't have a great game either.
Yeah, no one had a great game. I mean,
Fleming had a decent game for them. And then they have a transfer running back that played well, supposedly. I was going to ask you.
No, yes, I was going to say, because obviously everyone knows, between McCord and Brown, that neither one of them looked very, like they're the guy. And it's kind of like, what is Ohio State going to do now if they don't have that first round certified quarterback that they've always had? It's like, are they getting exposed in a sense that they can't change from what they've always done? And then it's like, okay, they have a great running back. So what we think. And I looked at their stats, and yeah, Tranium. I don't know how to say his last name. I apologize.
Trey, just say Trey.
Yeah, Trey. He had 57 yards, and that led Ohio State's rushing attack. Trevion had 47, and Mayan had 25, but 2 touchdowns. So that was kind of like that Jamal Williams, just give me the ball at the 2-yard line, I'll score every time. And it was kind of like, now their total rushing stats weren't that bad, but against Indiana, when in the past they beat them by 50, 60 consistently, it was definitely worrisome to see they only scored 22, 25 points.
So I will say, though, I did go back and watch. I didn't watch that game live, and I went and watched McCord's throws, a quick cut up of just his throws to see what was going on. And I think the reaction, the general reaction, is very overdone or overreacting. I think if you give this guy some time and let him settle in, he might be like, I'm not going to say he's going to be CJ Stroud level. I'm not going to say he's going to be terrible either. Like, trying to stay level headed. It's 1 week. Same thing with like the preseason rookie debuts, but you give him some time to get adjusted. I think he could end up being pretty good. Like, he's got some arm talent. He made some nice throws. He just was settling in as the starter, and I think we all can remember a few years ago when CJ Stroud had the first 3 or 4 games as a starter, and people were like, he may not be the guy after Fields. And what do you know? Like, CJ Stroud's drafted higher than Justin Fields was drafted. I don't think McCord's going to get drafted higher than CJ necessarily.
I don't think so.
But McCord's got he's got some arm talent, and he can make some throws. He's got a little bit of a funky kind of wind up and delivery almost. Kind of like gave me Jay Cutler vibes in a way for some reason. But
yeah, it was just, I don't know. I watched it. I had it on like a second screen to watch it, and I don't know. It just was boring. Like, it was better games for me to watch and better players. They just weren't doing anything. Like, I don't know. I kept reading that Devin Brown, correct? That's the backup. He's more athletic, and people are more excited about him. But that's just how it is. Is the younger guy always gets more excitement. So I don't know how actually good he is because I'm not very familiar with either one of these quarterbacks. But it was just not a very good game. I mean, they couldn't throw, they couldn't run, and the offensive line was the biggest thing for me because that's what I've said in the past is like, you know that they're always going to turn out these offensive linemen. They always do. And, wow, what a catch. Keon Coleman, another touchdown. We are still watching this LSU Florida State game.
You're ahead of me. Come on now.
It's okay. You'll see in a second.
Keon Coleman's having himself a game, though. He's impressing.
Balling.
And with how sloppy this game is, he's looked pretty good.
Yeah, it was nice, though. But what I was saying about Ohio State's offensive line is, like, they always have top guys, and they always have, even, like, DeJuan Jones, the tackle that rose up draft boards and then all of a sudden just fell during the draft. Like, they always have those guys.
He's a big dude that you can't trust to stay in shape. Like, if teams trusted him to stay under 400 pounds, they would have taken him in the top 40 probably, but there's a worry that he's going to be,
not
insane shape going into camp every year, and his knees are going to wear down, and he's not going to be able to move and everything like that, which could be valid. Like, if you don't trust the guy's going to stay in shape, then yeah, that's a concern. But I mean, he was a top 50 talent.
Yeah, I know you're high on him as well. But it was just weird that they could not manhandle that Indiana front line. Very, very worrisome for Ohio State. Now, obviously, it was just one game, and they can always improve. But it was just something that, like, I've never seen from Ohio State. I've never seen Ohio State struggle like that against such an inferior team. Like, yeah, those Purdue games that they would lose every now and then, and other little slip ups they get, but it's usually like they weren't struggling to score. Also, it was like they couldn't stop the other team. Those high shootouts, and it's just something that I've not seen from Ohio State in a very long time.
So, you real quick, you did not watch any of the Penn State game, did you?
I did not. I went back and watched some like extended highlights and some like cut ups, but that was about it.
So,
I think go back and watch a lot of Allard's throws, though.
I mean, obviously, like drafting wise, it's way in advance 2025 draft for these two guys, but Nick Singleton, the running back for Penn State, stood out. The dude runs through contact, and he really stood out to me. And Allard's obviously off to a good start. He made some great throws. He also put the ball in jeopardy a few times, and he kind of got lucky more than not, which happens. He reminded me of like a Josh Allen almost without the as strong of an arm. Like, just because he's like 6'5", he's a 6'5" white guy that is out there
Bubble.
running around, making throws off platform and stuff like that. Like, uh,
I wrote down like I said something about his mannerisms, especially like while he was running, and like going towards the line of scrimmage and still looking downfield. It was a mix of between like what I've seen from Josh Allen. Now that's when Josh Allen does not just tuck the ball and run, but when the
yeah,
way he like runs towards the lines, looking through, and then just kind of throws like an little off balance, not like a Patrick Mahomes type off balance, but just like a little like shifting your body a little bit ways. But it was also between a mix between Josh Allen and Aaron Rodgers. Some of those throws that
yeah.
Aaron Rodgers makes, where he doesn't really like plant either, and he doesn't even throw like a shortstop.
But
He
he
kind of
just
just
flips his
like
hips to get
he flips his
the
hips and just
generation. Yeah,
he just flips his hips, like flicks his up wrist, and then all of a sudden the ball shoots out of his hand to 20
yeah.
yards downfield into the receiver. And I was like, something about like when he was running, he kind of reminded me of Josh Allen. That was probably just because of the size, but when he threw the ball, I was like, that reminds me a lot. I was sitting there, I was like, that reminds me of someone. And then I started thinking about it. And then he had like one little hip twist, and I was like, that looks like Aaron Rodgers to me when he threw the ball. I'm
Yeah.
not saying he is Aaron Rodgers, just it just reminded me of how he threw. And I was like, oh wow, that and they were accurate passes too. Like he was, got pressure, rolled out of the pocket a little bit, kept his eyes downfield, was rolling towards the line of scrimmage, probably, making the
He
linebacker
was
commit.
under a lot of
Yeah.
pressure, and it's interesting. Like, I don't want to say interesting, like, but it's gonna be a battle, I think, for that team, dealing with any front seven that's a decent front seven, even with a top 5 pick at offensive tackle on their line. Like, the line looked not great. So that may be a storyline to follow for Penn State if they're hoping to do anything big this year. But speaking of terrible O line,
I know
Spencer
exactly where you're
Rattler
going. Yep.
may be in some trouble.
I did just want to say before we transition from the Penn State game, I just want to give a shout out to James Franklin because he'll never admit it. Well, maybe not because some other coaches have, but he had to have known the spread and the over under going for that last touchdown. I don't care what anyone says. You can debate a wall for all I care. He knew. He knew the spread. He knew the over under, and he wanted it, and he
You're
went
a
and got it.
degenerate.
He went
Move
and got
on.
it. I didn't bet that game, but I'm just saying there's no way you run that play instead of just taking a knee and walk out of there without having some kind of knowledge of it. But yes, now we can move on to North Carolina and South Carolina.
Yeah, Spencer Rattler might be in some trouble,
Yeah.
especially if Juice Wells isn't going to be playing full time. Like, I don't know. I know he had a foot problem, I think is what it was, something like that, but he didn't play much. I didn't see the all world freshman get in. I don't think he played a snap.
I didn't. I was looking for him. I was looking for. He's
I know
number
he
8.
didn't get a catch. I
Yeah,
don't even
I
think.
was staring at the screen every time, like looking for number 8 because I even looked it up. I was like, that's his number.
Yeah, I went and looked for his number on the
Yeah,
roster too.
and I
Nick
was
Harbers,
like,
who we're
yeah,
talking about, for anybody who's
yeah.
wondering, Nick Harbers, the 6'6" wide receiver that breaks track records apparently. But if Wells isn't playing, Leggett is another wide receiver I think they have who he had a great game. But South Carolina may have a rough year. But Drake May looked like Drake May. He looked like the Drake May from last year, which some people might say is good, some people might say is bad.
I don't see how anyone can say he's bad. I've always been a little hesitant, but he does everything. To me, I'm not the opposite, but like I could see people vying for him over Caleb in a draft. That's how good I think May is looking to me in the last year and a half.
I'm going to address that in 2 parts. Number one, when I say might be bad there, I mean like some people might not think favorably of the fact that he doesn't necessarily look too different in terms of like progression. Like he's not much better, which is fair or unfair. Like there's arguments both ways. But to directly respond to what you just said, hard no. I like Drake May, but I don't think he's anywhere near Caleb. Truthfully,
I don't personally either. I'm just saying I can see the argument.
I really can't. I can truthfully see an art. I'm not trying to like poo-poo on you. Like, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
But like I truthfully can see arguments for JJ McCarthy being the number 2 quarterback over May rather than any quarterback being over Caleb.
Interesting.
That's like the gap between 2 and 3 and 4 to me and 5 is closer than the gap between 1 and 2.
Okay, I mean, we shall see. I don't know. I
That's
just look
my
at
opinion.
May, and I think May's, he's quicker and faster than Caleb Williams. I mean, he runs the ball a little bit more, so that might be why. But and I think he has the same arm. Like his arm talent is right up there with him. I don't
I
know.
think he may have a better arm
Yeah,
strength wise than Caleb,
it
which
could
is
be
fair.
it's the
But
intangibles I know that Caleb has. I mean, he's already made 3 or 4 Patrick Mahomes plays that like in 2 games that is just like ridiculous.
they both have their own issues for the way they read the field and see the field. I think Caleb takes care of the ball better though. Like
Yeah.
Caleb, which it may not work at the next level. Like we doubt that already.
Yeah.
Because Caleb does those Mahomes Manziel type throws or plays where he extends it forever. But it could work because we see Mahomes do those kind of plays. And I think that's why people get so excited and make those comparisons.
Yeah.
May doesn't necessarily do that kind of stuff, but May will try to make throws into tight windows and turn the ball over that way. And he has issues with turnovers. And he threw 2 picks. One of them was not his fault. Like one of them, his receiver, didn't catch it and it went back to the DB. But otherwise, that other pick was not a good pick. But yeah, honestly, besides the quarterbacks, the thing that stood out to me the most for that game was the linebackers for UNC, Eccles and Colson. They had a good game.
I mean, yeah,
I want to say it's Colson. I know it's Power Eccles and somebody.
That defense had 9 sacks and they could have had 20. Like that's how often they were in the backfield, and it was I mean, I'm sure a lot of it was them too, but that South Carolina offensive line is in for a rude awakening the rest of the year because Spencer Rattler's gonna be running for his life the whole season, and it kind of sucks for South Carolina fans, especially I mean, I have now a soft spot for them, even though they're a rival because I'm marrying into a South Carolina family. But they there was so much hype built off of last year just because of who they beat. Tennessee, they beat Clemson. They won their bowl game, and it's kind of like, okay, Rattler's back. Yeah, we lost Gene Bell. We lost a few other guys, but we still have talent. Beamer Ball's on the way. We got Nick Harper. It was they've been recruiting pretty well, and it's kind of like, all right, new season, chance to beat a rival. I'll say they're a rival just because of the North Carolina South Carolina thing, not a true rival, but they really didn't have a chance. I mean, the offense looked. Spencer Rattler looked pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. He looked solid.
He didn't look bad.
It was just he couldn't do anything. Like when he could, he performed, but he couldn't perform that often. And I was
had some boneheaded decisions.
He'll always have that though. He'll always have.
That's who he is.
Yeah, he thinks he's he still probably thinks he's the next great quarterback, and he's got talent to be that. But sometimes he makes decisions that I'm just kind of like, what are you looking at? What are you seeing there?
That's who he is. But real quick before we go back or go to the Clemson and Duke game, JJ McCarthy, huge week, looked pretty good. Dante Moore debuting for UCLA looks promising. I don't think UCLA is going to go far this year necessarily, but Dante
Moore is a starter. I think he just needs to.
I mean, I have a soft spot for Garbers for some reason, just from watching him on the Elite 11 videos, he was on.
I was like, why would you have a soft spot
it's
for him?
literally the most random thing, and I don't actually follow the guy or anything, but it's when you see Elite 11 videos and them doing those interviews, confessional things, you kind of you feel like you know them a little bit more than you actually do.
That makes sense.
I don't know. Yeah. But as much of a soft spot as I have for Garbers, Dante Moore was far and away the better looking quarterback when he played. Wegman and Evan Stewart, the true sophomores for Texas A&M, had huge weeks.
Yeah.
Huge weeks. And then Benjamin Ursak for Stanford had a huge game as well. I haven't had a chance to go watch any of the Stanford game to know exactly what happened, but he had a crazy stat line.
Yeah, and in that game, I mean, one of my like standouts for the week, which was also like I guess now week 2 of them, but that Hawaii offense, it's kind of back to that, that was it at June Jones, I guess. If
Well,
I'm thinking
Chang
of the
is
right
the
coach.
coach now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, under Timmy Chang. So that offense is rolling. They're going to be scoring points. They're not going to be great, but they're going to score points. And we saw it against Vandy, and now we saw it against Stanford. So they're gonna return to that form. Now I don't know if they'll get to that that Sugar Bowl form that they with Cole Brennan and everything, but they're at least their
Rest in
offense is
peace.
rolling again. Yeah, no, rest in peace. But one of my other ones was just earlier today. I tried to see if I can get a reaction out of you earlier, but you didn't
Oh,
respond.
DJ.
Yeah,
DJ had a good game.
he's Yui Younglele. Is he back? He
I
had
mean,
239 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 rushing touchdowns. I mean, was Clemson the problem? People are asking if Clemson was the
I
problem?
mean, I do think Clemson. I'm not big on the Clemson coaching staff as talent developers. That's a conversation for another day, probably. I do think Clemson was part of the problem for him. I think off the field stuff. There's rumors of he had a hard time with some family stuff that was going on, which is difficult and affects you a lot, obviously, when that's happening. Yeah. So I don't want to say like he's back, like in terms of like what we thought he could be. But I also was like, there was a point last year where I was like, this guy could sneak his way up into like the top 50 if he keeps this up, like after the first few games, and he didn't.
Yeah, and I was a supporter of him. I thought like people were like, oh, he sucks, and he'd go like 20 for 29 with 290 yards and 3 touchdowns, and then Clemson guys, where's Cade? Like, and it'd be like,
yeah, I mean,
what else is he supposed to do? I mean, he's doing his job. Yeah, like maybe during the first 3 quarters didn't look pretty, but the final product was fine. And yeah, don't get me wrong, he still wasn't great. He wasn't great at all. But I think he was getting that unfair. I think like he was better than this situation, but that whole Spencer Rattler, Caleb Williams situation is like he was getting the unfair stick, whereas end of the stick where people were just wanting him gone no matter what he did. He could have a game of go have a 95% completion percentage, 500 yards, 4 touchdowns, and they still be like, but we want Caden. And it was kind of like, come on, like give him a break.
I mean, I'm just gonna throw this out there though. What's crazy is like we were so hyped over DJ when he first came in.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Over like because he's big, he can move. He's not like Lamar Jackson scrambling, but he can scramble, and he's got a strong arm. And like I know this guy's older than him, but it's funny to me like how Joe Milton's arm is just so insane.
Yeah, it is.
And then like Anthony Richardson's arm is so insane. Like that those two guys like the last couple of years have just made me not even like process like that how strong DJ's arm is, if that makes sense. Like typically this guy is the guy that's gonna have like a top 5 strongest or top 3 strongest arm in college football, and like last year he may not have had that because Joe Milton and Anthony Richardson were in college football last year.
Yeah. I can see that. And we'll see. I mean, Oregon State's they're a team that could be set up for him. I'm not very familiar with their weapons around him. Obviously they worked well today, but I do know the 2 things that Oregon State usually cares about are their offensive line and defense in the Pac-12. So I think that could really set him up for success to see how he returns back, if he can return back to that form that we thought when he took over, for 1 game or 2 games when Trevor Lawrence was out, and he saved it. But then my last thing I wanted to mention was I think it happens every year, but I truly think this freshman class, like this recent true freshman class, is something that is special. I just wrote down some names that thought out. Obviously, we talked about Dante Moore already. Talked about Dylan Edwards earlier, who probably had the most impressive showing out of all true freshmen. And then, Jaden Rashada. He had a solid game, 236 yards and 2 touchdowns. And just because of all the stuff that was going on with him, with different schools, going into Arizona State League, with all the hype that, I'm sure a lot of people want him to fail.
He may have started at Florida.
Oh, 100%. And it was just, he had a solid game. He didn't show out, but he had a solid game, especially, starting as a true freshman. Jackson Arnold, I know the competition. He was in mop-up duty. But 11 for 11 for 114 yards, a touchdown, 40 rushing yards, and another touchdown. pretty impressive for a true freshman to walk in. People were talking about he was probably the best quarterback. Some people, in that whole class. So that was impressive to see. What do you want to see from this Monday night game, Duke versus Clemson?
I want to see Riley Leonard play well against a very good, a very talented Clemson defense. I want to see Graham Barden play well against a very talented Clemson front seven, and that's my two things. Obviously, like Clemson's defense has a lot of draft prospects, not as many on their offense right now, like besides Will Shipley. But Barden is a guy that I have in my top 10 to 15 overall right now, and Leonard's in my top 32. And good showings can go a long way for them when they're 2 touchdown underdogs, essentially.
Yeah, I just want to see. I want to see how Cade performs. Honestly, he had so much hype coming in. Obviously, he was the number 1 quarterback. People wanted him to replace DJU, so he finally did. He looked all right at times. Other times he didn't look too much better. So I want to see, with a full offseason under their belt, knowing he's QB1 with Clemson, solid team, great front seven. I want to see, him do what he should be doing to teams. On the flip side, I do want to see how Duke performs because I know they were kind of a surprise last year. However, after hearing other people talk about it, I went back and looked at the schedule, and they avoided a lot of top teams last year, and this year they're not so much. So I know you're really high on Riley Leonard, so I think it's going to be a good test for him to see how he can perform with inevitably what I think there'll be pressure around them, and I want to see how he performs with pressure in his face.
Even if Barden plays the way Barden can play, and it's the same thing how Alar had nonstop pressure, even with Fashanu protecting him. That Clemson front is too talented for the rest of the Duke offensive line. So Leonard's going to have to deal with some pressure, and you're going to get to see him sink or swim with that, which, it'll be interesting. Mm-hmm. Daniel Jones didn't necessarily perform great when he was at Duke, and he still went top 15, top 10 or whatever.
This is more of just I want to see them do it on the field, not as much as a NFL draft projection. But I just want to see.
Yeah.
I just want to see how Riley performs with that because, like I said, last year I don't think he really had to face too much top talent, and this year he's starting the year off with Clemson, who everyone's kind of overlooking this year, and I think they have a great shot. I mean, I say a great shot to win the ACC, and I'm looking at this game right now, and it's 38-17. Florida State is just absolutely kicking down LSU in the second half. So it's going to be a good battle between Florida State and Clemson for that ACC title, but I do, I just want to see Riley Leonard do it, especially because you're so high on him, and whenever you're high on someone that I've not really keyed in on before or too much, it's always like, all right, I need to see something because either I need to argue against you, or I'm missing something. I haven't seen it. So it's one of those things where I just want to see. I want to see him, it's a primetime game too, so it's easy to watch. It's not like a 12 o'clock kickoff on a Saturday where there's 1,000 other games that I don't really care about watching Duke play.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode, our week 1 overreactions, we could say. But I will go ahead and close it out now with Florida State about to win this game 38-17 over LSU. So a very impressive performance by the Seminoles.
Yeah, I'm voting for Heisman.
Really cool for Heisman. Make sure to follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, all at Empirical_Scout. If you're listening on Spotify, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube, and vice versa. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to listen to us on Spotify. For Taylor, we will see you later.
1